the Merkava tank. We've done a short explainer on this tank, which is the principal fighting vehicle of the Israeli Defense Forces. Take a look. The Merkava is the Israeli Army's principal main battle tank. It's been part of all of Israel's ground offensives since 1982. Now, the Merkava replaced the British-designed Centurion tank. Interestingly, the Indian Army also used the Centurion for over 4 decades. The Merkava replaced the British-designed Centurion tank. Now, interestingly, the Indian Army also used the Centurion for over 4 decades. It was called the Vijayanta. This tank was retired in the late 1990s. Now, the Merkava has been in service for over 4 decades in the Israeli military. It's gone from Mark 1 to Mark 5 in the last 4 decades. The Mark 4 tank that you see here is one of the most commonly deployed variants. Now, the tank has a crew of 4 persons and a total weight of 65 tons. To give you an idea of how much that weighs, the Arjun Mark II MBT has a weight of 68 tons. Now let's look at the Merkava's capabilities in the triangle of firepower, protection and mobility. Now the tank has a 1500 horsepower engine, and the interesting part about that is the engine is located in the forward part of the tank as opposed to the rear. This engine also affords protection to the crew when it's mounted in the front. It drives the tank to a speed of about 65 kilometers on the road. Now the tank has a 120 mm main gun which can fire a variety of ammunition, high explosive anti-tank, support rounds like APFSDS and kinetic energy penetrators. It also has a 12.7 mm heavy machine gun in the front to shoot at other vehicles, lightly armored vehicles and fortifications. It's bristling with these MMGs. It's got 3 of these 7.62 mm MMGs on the turret, and the tank is protected by composite sloped armor. But the interesting part about this is a very unique Israeli invention called the trophy self-protection system. It's a active protection system, which means that it fires small projectiles to protect the tank from rocket propelled grenades that are coming in to attack the tank. And this very unique system, it affords an additional layer of protection to this tank. Now, another unique feature of this tank is that it can carry 6 soldiers at the rear. This is very unique because normally main battle tanks don't carry infantry, but this is extremely useful for the Israeli military because when you're fighting in urban combat, you can carry soldiers in as well in protection inside a main battle tank. If the Israeli military moves into Gaza, as it will in the next couple of days, the Merkava is likely to be at the forefront of the fighting. So that was the Merkava, and the interesting part about the Merkava, sir, is that it's been deployed for about 40 years now.
Yeah.
And all its operations, while it was designed for a conventional war, all the operations have been in low intensity conflict, you know, in Beirut, in Gaza, in the West Bank. So I think the tank has to reinvent itself, like you said. But Aditya, you know, coming back to the hostages, there's a very large number of hostages that Hamas has taken. What is the anger, what is the kind of groundswell of public opinion in Israel, and is that propelling what the government is planning to do next with a ground offensive?
I think there are 2 things that are very much visible. One, there's a national unity, because every time we talk about terrorism and particularly about Hamas, and of course the visuals that have come in on Saturday, with 1,300 people being butchered, videos of people being beheaded, killed, burnt, that has led to a national unity. And this national unity has formed an emergency unity government, but there's also people who are upset with Benjamin Netanyahu, who are upset with the justice minister and the national security minister. But that will come later. For now, their formidable challenge is to attack Hamas and make them incapable of realizing or dreaming of another such attack. But you know, to your earlier question about India's political will after 26/11, you know, it's a mixture of political will and your capabilities, and if you have the capacity and the bandwidth to control that for a very long time. What I observed after 26/11 is that there was no political will. Shiv Shankar Menon obviously wrote this inside his book that there were options.
Yeah.
That does not mean that the Indian army and the intelligence agencies were not prepared.
Right.
They were very much prepared. They're always prepared with options. In fact, I'm told that they had details of Hafiz Saeed's residence and the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Toiba. Those were pinpointed. They had assets on ground that could have conducted these tasks but were not conducted. And I think more or so, Manmohan Singh government in UPA 1 and UPA 2 at that time had a policy of status quo. They wanted to keep relations at some kind of a bay, and that paradigm shift really happened when Modi actually came in. And there was a response to the to the Uri terror attack with a surgical strike, and after Pulwama, we had the Balakot. So it has really only increased, and we have increased the bar so as to say that if there is another such terror attack, there will be a heavier response. But as General Saab really pointed out, I think this kind of a attack where there are 1,500 people walking in paragliders, in small boats, and by land on these jeeps is unthinkable. I don't think any army would have really prepared for this kind of an operation, especially Israel. Even though we can't compare Israel and India, the land is low, the population is low, even though their military strength might be much better technologically speaking as well.
So it's a completely different paradigm in warfare. It's almost like a terror attack on the scale of a infantry assault, like a brigade assault. And how do you prepare for that? But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. And this is a story that we'll continue to track on the News9 Plus show. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Interestingly, among the 300,000 Israeli reservists mobilized, there are over 200 Indian Jews fighting in the ranks of the Israeli military. And we have this very interesting report here from our colleague Shanta Shri, who's spoken to the Jewish associations in Israel. Take a look.
Members of the Indian community are taking on Hamas terrorists in Israel.
About 206 reservists have been called for duty.
But back in India, their own community members are facing a twin crisis. First, displaced by the ethnic clashes in Manipur. Second, their dreams of returning to their holy land of Israel shattered. Members of the Banai Minashi community living in Manipur and Mizoram claim descent from one of the 10 biblical lost tribes of Israel. Their sole goal is to attain Aliyah, that is, to return to the Holy Land. But with the war raging in Gaza, their dream seems elusive.
We've been coming to Israel for the past more than 30 years now, under the guidance of our revered Rabbi Eliyahu Michael from Jerusalem. Aliyah started in the, early 1990s and then it's gone on to this day. Of course, there is a definite government policy to bring us here, but then of course things have been mired in bureaucracy and delays and all those things, which we all are very, very familiar with. So at this point of time, we have to understand one thing is that we have compulsory conscription here. Anybody from the age of 18 to 21 has to serve in the IDF. That is there. And most of our boys do serve in that.
The ones in the IDF, we cannot talk to them because they are prohibited from communicating outside. Their family members, I'm in touch with them every day. We hear the news. They're also all very perturbed and anxious, but they're all there. They're part of the system.
It's the most unfortunate thing to be a Kuki B'nai Menashe Jewish person at this point of time. First of all, we're facing a war here in Israel. and then we're facing like an ethnic cleansing and a program for annihilation in Manipur, which is being like, which like I can tell you straight-faced, because the state government's complicit in this.
Jewish community, along with the other Kuki communities, have scattered into the hills, and they were displaced. They lost their livelihood. They're living off relief in relief camps. We hope we have been asking the authorities in Israel that we really need to have some kind of emergency lifting of the community there. We are also working hard and regularly in touch with the system in Israel to organize a kind of an emergency Aliyah ship, transportation for all of them.
Even as about 300 Indian Jews fight Hamas, 5,000 community members in Manipur and Mizoram await their turn to travel to the Promised Land.
Shanta, what are the Indian Jewish associations in Israel? What's the mood there like now?
So there are two main NGOs over there. One is Shavai Israel and another one is Degel Menashe. They help the Jewish community in India, mainly the B'nai Menashe community, which is one of the lost biblical tribe of Israel, to move to Israel, because that is their ultimate goal in life, that is return to the Promised Land. And of course they are worried, and they want their people to come to Israel as soon as possible. But the interesting part is this, that the B'nai Menashe community in India are stuck with twin crises. One is because they mostly used to stay in Manipur and parts of Mizoram.
Right.
Because of the ethnic clashes that had hit over there, most of them had moved to other parts of the country or are staying in the camp area. So they are also appealing to the Israel government that as soon as the war subsides, or if the situation becomes a little stable, then an emergency aliyah or emergency lifting of them should take place, because at the end of the day, that's what their goal is, to return to the Promised Land.
Right. And how many? There are 200 reservists who are fighting there in the IDF?
Yes, there are more than 200 reservists who have been called for by the IDF, and they are fighting over there. And also there are other people who have been trained. So that is the generally, the rule, that whoever reaches over there from India or other parts of India, they have to go into this compulsory conscription, and after that, whenever they are called upon, they will fight. So yes, there are around 5,000 of them in India and around 5,000 in Israel, and out of which more than 300 are part of IDF now.
Oh, 300 are part of IDF,
Yes.
and they are wrestling in the horns of a twin dilemma. There's ethnic strife back home, and there's conflict in the Promised Land.